all the reports that you want to run, how to set them up to make them easier to run on a regular basis. Remember Keystroke Live? Same time, same place, 10 o'clock Mountain Time. I'm going to, next week, the first week of every month is Michael Gebb. So that will be next week. And I'm going to kind of show you how this works in Keystroke. There's report queues are a way to set up one report or a group of reports that you want to run on a regular basis. First you're going to save your report settings. So however you want your report to run, including the printer it's going to print to, all the settings and all of that, when you're on the report itself, you do Shift F10, give the report a name that's going to make sense to you, and save the settings. I recommend, if you're going to do this type of thing, you're probably, at least for report groups and report saved reports that you're going to run, save them so everybody can see them, just to make it easier. Once you have all your report settings saved that you want to run, you're going to create a report group or queue in Keystroke and add one or more reports to it that you're going to run all at the same time. Now, maybe daily that might be a payments report and a sales transactions report and a sales analysis report. You also may run some of those same reports weekly, monthly. So it's pretty much up to you what reports you're going to want to run. You can assign these report groups and or the saved reports to specific registers or have them available to all. I recommend all just more for convenience, just in case, you switch out a computer and it gets a different register number or something like that. But that's really up to you. Now you can run these report groups from within Keystroke in the report manager, or you can automate it. Now if you are going to automate it, that's where sharing is going to be best, although you can automate it if they're all for a particular register number. When you automate it, you do need to assign that register number, or otherwise Keystroke may not run the correct reports. For automation, besides running from Report Manager, you can have a shortcut on your desktop to run a particular report. Usually that's in the form of a batch file. You can just run it from a command line, typing something in from a DOS prompt, or you could set up a toolbar button to run a report or a group of reports. Batch files can be added as a scheduled task in Windows to be run at specific times, and save reports to a certain place or print them to a certain printer. So you're always going to have them. If you're going to automate reports from a shortcut, a batch file, command, something like that, there's a great document that describes how to do it. I'm not going to go through that step by step, but it's going to be in the Keystroke doc folder on the server, and it's called ksr.doc. For those unfamiliar with our naming conventions, KSR stands for Keystroke Reports. The other thing that's kind of nice with automating, you can use relative dates. The help file has a great little page on date formats, but I've included a couple here that aren't in there yet at this point, but they have been around for a while. The first one, the BPM EPM. Basically that says beginning of previous month, end of previous month. So if you have reports that are always going to be run monthly and you're going to set them up in a batch file, you can have your start equal BPM beginning of previous month, or BPY for beginning of previous year. And then your end is the end of the previous month or end of the previous year. There's other things you can do, like start equal -1 day or -1D for day, W for week, M for month, Q for quarter, Y for year. Or if you always want to run it starting at the first of this month, when you run a report, you can just have start equals 01. In Keystroke, and if you've never played with this before, when you're putting dates in Keystroke, if you just put in 2 digits, that indicates the day you want it to start, the day of the month, and it's always going to be the current month and the current year. So if you put in 01, it's start equal 01. It's going to always start at the beginning of the current month and the current year. If you always want to start at the beginning of this year, you could put in 0101 without a year. It's always going to default to the beginning of the year. So those relative dates come in really handy when you're going to automate reports. You can also set up reports to run on toolbars, and it can provide really easy access to the most commonly used reports. You can set up the report settings in those toolbars so they can be applied without requiring user interaction by setting certain hotkeys or that sort of thing. And I'm going to show you a couple of those. The new version 8 toolbars in Report Manager have some report buttons that you can set up. You can set them up anywhere, but having them in Report Manager kind of makes sense. So let's take a look at Keystroke. We're already in Report Manager. As you can see down here on the status bar, we're in Reports. All of your report settings, and I can't emphasize looking at what's on the status bar because it really can help you with kind of what's going on in Keystroke. If you're on the Sales menu, you see on the status bar, Reports for Invoices and Closeout, or if you're on Database, Reports for Databases. So it kind of gives you some information as far as what's going on. So let's set up a report and save it. And you can kind of see saved reports. I was on Inventory Database. We don't have any saved reports here. So it automatically comes up with last used. On Analysis, we do have a saved report called Inventory Sales Analysis. And that list can get really long. You can have local settings and shared settings. But let's set up an Inventory Database report. We want to group this by department. We just want it summary, but we want all the departments. And always recommend when you're setting up reports, run it to the screen initially to make sure it's the report that you want. So if this is my Inventory Database report, we can see it here on the screen. Okay, yes, this is the report I want. So we can go back, brings up our last used settings. Again, look at the status screen. F1 will get you help information. Shift F10 saves the settings. So if I do Shift F10, I can give this report a name. Well, might help if I could spell. So Department Summary Inventory Database. You can set a security level if you like. I'm just going to leave it blank or the null symbol. What that means is anybody who can run reports can run this saved report. But you could give it a security level. This is where you determine if it's only going to show up on this register, which is register 1. If you want to show it up on all registers, you just put in a 0 there, and it shows up everywhere. So we've saved that report setting. You don't have to run it again. Once you've saved it, when you go under Inventory Database, you can see your shared settings. Now these shared settings also show up under the Queue menu, under either Run or Setup. So you can set up report save settings from here. This gets a little more difficult to set up individual reports. I find it easier just to go under your individual menu, but you can by adding a new setting. You know, which report are you going to run? Is it sales, databases, purchases? I just find it easier going under the menus, but it shows you all of your shared settings. And if you have settings that are unique to a particular register, it'll show up on top. So these are all your individual saved reports. So to set up a report group, or you can run those saved reports from here, or as I said, under the menus. They show up both places. To set up a report group, we already have one set up. And of course, one is not found, but it's looking for, we're just going to delete that. This is a shared setting. Keystroke assigns an ID number. That number is important if you're going to automate this and run it from a batch file. But it's running the sales invoice summary report, and maybe at the same time we want the department summary inventory database report, and that just saves those settings. If you want to run that report group, you can go under Run, Report Groups. Now, because we're doing it here, it's going to ask for dates. I'm going to go back to the first of the year, and it runs my sales invoice summary. Obviously, with our sample data, we don't have anything for this year. We have the department summary inventory database report. All of this can be set up. It's a great way to set up all your reports. Now, here are the toolbars we've set up in the version 8 report settings. So, and you can edit these, you can add to them, you can run a saved report. Really all that does is go under the Queue menu and go Run Saved Report. And if we look at how the button is set up, it's going to run the menu Queue, and then it's going to go to Run and Reports and Save Settings. That's all that button does. Similar thing for running a report group. It's just going to go to Queue, Run, Report Group. But it can also run specific reports if you want. This one is going to run a current inventory by department, and it automatically, this one goes to your last used setting. So if you look at the button, it's going to go under Run Menu, Inventory Database. The percent signs are like the Alt key. So it's sending in, it's grouping. When you go to the report, it's going to the grouping. It's going to group by department. I'm going to stop sharing my webcam right now just because I'm getting a slow connection. So hopefully that won't interfere with everything. But you can set up all kinds of toolbars. Try not to get too fancy, but it works great. You can do a time of day report. All of these are currently set up. So I'd like to kind of open this up for questions on what you might have on setting up reports and report queues and report groups. Does anybody have any questions? Well, let's review this real quickly. Save your reports, you use Shift F10. Give it a name, security level, whether you want it for all registers or just an individual one. You can create report groups, and you can automate it. We're always happy to help you if you're having a problem with this. The automation is great. You can set it up. You can even set it up to go to PDF files, text files. It's a great way to go. Once you find a report, save the settings. Once you find a group of reports you run on a regular basis, you can set it up in a batch file and automate it with a batch file, run it from a command line, or set up a toolbar. Thanks, everybody, for being here today. Next week will be Michael Gebb. It's the first Wednesday of the month, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day.